Hey guys, Morphologist here.
What's up guys, it's Wasted Space.
And today we're talking about Update 1.1. It's a pretty big update, and unfortunately we're coming to you a little bit late because I had to go make an emergency visit to a relative abroad.
Yeah.
So,
and I've been making excuses all week.
Yeah, I know. I've been getting so many questions. Where's the next Patchology update? So here it is. Well, the saddest part of this, I think, though, is that this past update 1.1 was a really exciting update. I mean, they released some pretty great stuff. And just to start off with, on that list, they released drones. And I think that's probably one of the best parts of this update. And so, since I haven't had much time since I've gotten back to take a look at it, I'm going to have to refer to Wasted to tell me a little bit about how they are.
So yeah, I've only tried out drones a small amount myself, although I have had a chance to go around and have a decent ruckus with the drones that are currently available again. And I think it's a pretty exciting update. I certainly found myself going, oh damn, this is cool a lot when I was playing around with them. We got 3 drone types at the moment in the game, and then the pirate bases, which is kind of like, they almost act as essentially a hub for the drones, even though they don't technically act like that.
Well, how much of a threat are they really, though, to you? Like, does it really change the way you feel about playing the game or how you play the game in survival?
To some extent. You have 3 types of drones, as I said, and you've got these little ones called incisors that are pretty weak, and at best they kind of act as an annoyance more than anything else, and those are the things you're going to be dealing with most of the time. And it's cool to have something come along once in a while that's actually aggressive and hostile, don't get me wrong. That's certainly added a level of threat to the game that wasn't there before, and I think is really cool. But they're not much of an issue. And then you've got these informants, which are the ones that, the idea is they're the ones that kind of inform the rest of the drone group. So they're the ones that detect you and then run away. They're supposed to be spies. But because the other drones aren't really that scary at the moment, the whole thing doesn't necessarily tie together. However, I think as far as what it offers for a game experience in future, I wasn't expecting this, and this is absolutely awesome because it's AI. It's what we've been looking for all along. It is the first glimpses at the fact that there is going to be a threat in survival. There's going to be a threat in creative even. There's going to be a reason to go out there and play and defend your stuff because something is actually going to come and try and get you. And that's one thing I've seen having tried it is things will actively try and get you. If you hang around for a while, an informant spots you, something like that, you will end up with attention. You can't just, if you sit around, things will come and attack you. And I think that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, it gives people another thing to worry about, another thing to build their creations to defend against. It gives people a reason or a program for when they construct things, and I think that's a lot more exciting. I think it's also important to note here, though, that no matter what you may think of the current drones, the very idea that they've added this into the game means that we're going to be able to see modded versions of this, player-submitted versions of this that will exceed the capabilities of what Keen's put out, as we've seen with other things that they've added to the game. Meaning we're going to have some pretty exciting enemies just to start off with what we have right now.
Oh yeah, that gets me super excited for what it could mean in future. I don't believe there's like the full information about how to mod drones into the game out as it currently stands, but I'm sure that's coming. And at the same time, there are occasionally some critics of the idea that, Keen should be doing this. Keen should be producing something that's solid, and you shouldn't need modders to add stuff into the game. And I would say, especially in this case, no, modders are there to mean that if Keen produces one thing and you like it, there are 20 more things that are different that you can go and enjoy. And if that one thing you don't like, you've still got 20 more things, and maybe you like one of those. It's just, for us as players of the game, it's going to just offer that much more options for things to do. And especially with something like AI, the scope of what you could do with it is just damn cool. I'm super, super stoked about this one.
It adds so much more contrast to the game, and trust me, it does make it better for playability over a longer period of time for veteran players. It also makes it much more appealing, I think, for newer players to try to get into the game, seeing what's actually being offered right now for you to run into.
So another thing that came out with this patch, and another thing we got to mention, is the sort of pretty detailed sneak peek on planets and what we can expect. We had some really cool screenshots in the video, and it was stuff that we have not seen before. Stuff that I've not seen before, and dramatically different. So I know this is one thing that you have seen while you were away, Morph. What do you think of those very cool planet screenshots?
I have to say, I was just absolutely blown away. When I saw these screenshots, they had far exceeded my expectations for what a planet could look like. I mean, one of the first ones they posted, you may not have noticed it immediately, but there are clouds in the sky. In the source code version right now, we don't have clouds. We don't have any atmosphere effect. Now, I'm not saying it could just be a texture, but the fact that it's there just tells me that they're adding things to the game that are going to make it much more immersive. And the grass is much better. There's more trees, more models, more textures. Oh, it's so good. It looks so great.
Plus, one thing we saw a sneak peek of in the source code when we were sort of playing around, basically because it was something you had to remove from the source code in order to make it all work, was there was information in there for different biomes. And this was our first chance to actually get a look at what those biomes could potentially look like. We got to look at the ice stuff. We got to look at what appears to be some sort of Mars-like terrain. We got to look at a moon, and in particular, we got to look at a moon with a planet in the background, which I thought was awesome. The whole thing kind of tied together, and I'm really excited to see what they could do with the biome thing. But it's also noticeable that the way the whole terrain was behaving there was very different to what we saw in source code. There were these little clumps of plants, or there was these big forests. They've advanced how it calculates and makes these biomes way beyond the things we were showing last week in last week's Patchology. Just, obviously that was slightly out of date, but the difference it's made is massive. The only thing I will notice as a slightly negative is one of the screenshots had like this really noticeable LOD in the background, like the LOD, level of detail, which is where they scale down the level of detail on objects as it gets further away. And I very much wonder whether that's something that's current, like, because it's in testing source code thing, or whether that's something that's actually how it's going to look in the grand scheme of things. Because obviously they have to do a bit of scaling. These are huge planets, but I don't know. I don't know if you saw that, Morph.
I did. And I did notice this, and it brings up an interesting point, I think, that we've been talking about. We mentioned it, though we did not get any sort of official say on whether or not this was true. In the last Patchology, when we talked about 1.0199, we were saying a lot of these updates that they're doing are to prepare the game for planets, because there's a lot of tweaking, a lot of performance updates that need to happen before it's going to run well on your computer. And later, actually, in this patch, I can't exactly remember where I saw this, but a dev actually said, yes, the reason why we're doing all of these fixes is because we want to make planets run well. We want to do this before planets come out. And I think LOD is one of the things they've actually been working on. So I think that's definitely something that's in the early stages, but by the looks of it, yeah, they're working to make the game run much better by working through how to present LOD and Space Engineers.
Yeah, that's a pretty damn good point, to be honest, and I think it's something that's going to be necessary. We've talked about performance plenty on Patchology, and stuff like LOD is a vital part of that when you're dealing with as many objects as we hope there's going to be available at any one time in one of these multiplayer servers.
Yeah, if we want to talk about anywhere near the level of detail we would need to have a convincing, immersive world, then LOD is going to play a huge, massive role in that. And I guess pun intended, because planets are freaking huge. Anyway, I think this is a good way to move on to another point I think that is really valid. And it was brought up actually by a lot of you who watched the last episode of Patchology. Some of you were questioning the usefulness of planets, and it's a valid point because right now we don't know much about what you can do on planets that you can't do in outer space. And Wasted, I think you have something on that.
Yeah, it was an interesting scenario. Some of you guys may know I stream a couple of times a week, and what we stream is Space Engineers. But on the stream on Monday, randomly we ended up with a couple of the Space Engineers developers in the channel, for all intents and purposes, doing a on-the-spot Q&A. So we had a couple of Thomases, the lead developer, and as far as I understand it, the business manager of Keen Software House in the channel, impromptu, asking us questions and also giving us, to some extent, little spoilers of stuff that might be incoming. And,
oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. And talking about reasons to land on planets is one of the questions that I specifically got asked, and they threw out to the stream, was, why do we want to land on planets? What do we expect to find there, and what would we want to find there to make planets really cool for us? And I thought it was really interesting that these guys came asking a lot of questions of us as a community. And I think that's probably a bit indicative of how Keen have always operated. They're very community focused. But one of the things that was definitely something that they're thinking about at the moment is, what are our opinions on what's going to make planets really cool? What's going to make planets function as a thing for us?
There were a lot of cool comments too on that. I just, just from the last episode, people said things like finding special artifacts, special materials, but I think there could be even more. And you probably heard a ton of suggestions. What more did the devs actually say on that aspect?
Well, it was nice because it meant I have read through a lot of the comments on Patchology. Obviously, I've read both yours and mine. I like to keep track of the comments as best as I can. So it gave me an opportunity immediately to kind of field some of the things that you guys have been talking about. So one thing that came up a lot of the time was the idea of exploration, the idea that when you get down to the planets, you want to find something interesting there. So I was able to put forward that idea of there should be some sort of city, perhaps abandoned cities, some sort of abandoned station, something of value down there that means that you really want to go down there. Maybe even some sort of customized, unique module, perhaps something along those ideas. And also, they were also interested in questioning and asking about what would we consider an alien environment, which I found really, really interesting, especially because that's an interesting question to start off with. What would we consider an alien environment? What would make a really good alien environment? So,
it's important to note here that that's a question that actually gives us an answer to a question we have not yet asked. Or I think we asked earlier is, are there going to be different biomes other than, say, Mars, a moon, or an Earth-like planet? But please go on.
So yeah, a lot of what came from this, I get the impression that a lot of it was, I don't know how to phrase this properly, as you can probably tell, but a lot of what came from this was speculatory rather than pure information, if you know what I mean. But one thing that I think I can probably break as at least confirmed to some extent is I asked about aerodynamics. I was asked what my top 3 things I wanted for planets was concerned, and I mentioned water, knowing that it was probably impossible, and I mentioned Morph's mapping idea because I think that's really cool. And then I mentioned aerodynamics, like I've been banging on about. I want some reason why a box won't fly. And the response to that was essentially, we've got something that will surprise you incoming in that respect. So you can read into that what you want. I mean, there was a lot of this read into it what you want sort of responses. But I definitely got the idea that as far as that was concerned, some form of aerodynamics is essentially confirmed. We will get some idea of why a box won't fly in an atmosphere and something that is more streamlined will. And that makes me so excited. God damn.
Oh my God. You know, when Wasted first told me that, I have to confess it was before we did this recording. I literally went back from my chair. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I'm still excited just thinking about it because that adds so much more to the game. They have to consider the shape of your ship because before, let's just be honest, the first thing you built was a Borg cube. If you're in a Star Trek, that's just a big box. And that's pretty much all we you can just build a cube and it works just as great as anything else. Yep. And the only difference is it looks better. But now there's going to be a reason for you to make that aerodynamic looking ship.
That sleek looking monster, yeah, instead of that first box you built with a thruster on all of the sides and, hey, it flies. I'm a genius.
And also, this wasn't confirmed or denied either. When I hear about atmospheric aerodynamics, I also think about friction. I also think about entry friction, so a ship breaking up. Now, they didn't say that that's what's going to happen, but I'm really hoping that there's going to be some sort of simplistic sort of physics to that. It doesn't have to be overly complex, just enough to say, hey, a big ship entering atmosphere is going to have a big problem because it's going to start to burn up, which I think is cool.
Yeah, now, of course, this was all very speculatory. Everything that was said was in a way that was kind of to try and hint and tease at stuff without giving too much away, which they did very, very well. But I certainly got the impression that the system we were going to get was, don't expect something like Kerbal Space Program. Don't expect a big, complex aerodynamic system. But we were certainly going to get something that means that sort of thing matters when you get down to a planet surface. And I think that's awesome. But there was one other thing that they mentioned that I was very, very intrigued about. One other question that I got a response to that I was very, very interested into. And that was a question about weapons.
Oh, yes, I'd nearly forgotten about that. Go on.
Well, basically, I mean, both me and Morph have talked about this before, and the idea is in vanilla Space Engineers, there is a limited availability of weapons. The weapons we have are relatively boring. And so, me being the sort of engineer that does tend to make stuff that is designed to fight, asked about what's the sort of future for weaponry in Space Engineers? What are your ideas? And can we expect anything as far as the weaponry is concerned? And obviously, again, this was a kind of speculatory response. They were being very coy about what they said, but the response I got was, I would be very surprised and impressed by something they've got coming. And this was the best bit. It will give me more tactical options, was the phrase they used.
Oh my, yes. See, there's a lot of exciting stuff. See, I was actually telling somebody the other day, they posted on Patchology, and I responded to them. I forget exactly what question, forgive me. They asked, but my response was, I think it was on AI actually. They wanted to see AI creatures on planets or some form of AI. This was before the 1.1 update was released, and lo and behold, some sort of AI. I said to him, Keen is actually really good about not overhyping their product. They don't talk about things and then they just release them. And this sort of says that. Now, they did reveal this to us, but it was sort of impromptu. It wasn't an official PR release that they did this. But man, we had no idea they were working on this stuff, and they are. They didn't even say anything about it. They're just doing it. It's pretty remarkable. Now, I think this is a good way to segue into something I think pretty exciting, actually. We have a lot more questions, and I'm sure you guys do too. And there are a lot of questions we didn't answer that you guys asked in the comment section of the last episode. So we're actually going to have an opportunity to ask a few more questions in an upcoming interview. Tell me about that, Wasted.
Yeah, we will be, the date is not yet confirmed, but we will be interviewing a reasonably prominent figure from Keenhoff Software House for Patchology in the near future. And what we really want is to hear what you guys would ask the developers if you were to get the chance. If the developers would come and ask you, what do you think of Space Engineers? What do you want to improve? What do you want to do with this game? What would you say? And that's the sort of thing we'd like to hear from you guys, because it was very, very clear in the stream that when these guys came along, they were super duper interested in what people's opinions were, what people wanted to see from the game, and they were super duper hyped to see people excited about what was coming up. So I think this is a great opportunity. We want to field some of your guys' questions. We really want to hear what you guys think about the game, what you guys want to ask the developers, and we have obviously some questions of our own. But yeah, throw them out there, guys. What do you want to ask the devs?
I think it's a super important point to make here, too, that don't just think that because it hasn't been answered officially that they won't answer a question. As we've seen from Wasted's stream, as he's reported, they've actually said some things that they haven't said to anybody anywhere. So it's very possible that they may actually answer your question. So please, if you've got a question to ask, please ask it. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching this time, and I hope to see you guys next time for our next update, 1.101.
Yeah, I hope you're really stoked for that one, guys. And take it easy. Thanks for watching.